Earlier today, I posted the video just saying very clearly, I thought, that just like when someone dies with COVID, it's not the same as them dying from COVID. Someone can die after getting a vaccine, and it does not immediately mean that it was the vaccine that caused their death or was even related. And I didn't say that it wasn't, but apparently 1 out of 10 people, roughly, didn't like the obvious being pointed out. That this woman, overly tanned, platinum bleach blonde, with the overly done makeup, in I think most people's opinion, with it looks like a brandy or some form of a martini glass, almost finished in hand. I said that it's possible that the acute liver failure that she suffered could have come from anything else. Maybe behavior, maybe her lifestyle. She seems, as a single mother at 39 with a 9-year-old, like maybe a bit of a second life kind of party girl. It's not out of the question for me to question it, and it's certainly not out of the question to say, hey, there's no evidence that the vaccine killed a perfectly happy, healthy 39-year-old. But perfectly happy and healthy 39-year-olds do die from acute liver failure about 1,600 to 2,000 times a year. Roughly the same number of people that have died from the vaccine so far in the United States. That was my point earlier, and it's the same exact point that we all made for a year. When the news claimed someone died with COVID, and then you found out they were hit by a car, or they fell off a roof, and they just had COVID or tested positive for COVID, we all said, that's not really a COVID death. Well, you should be doing the same thing with these vaccine deaths. You should be calling bullshit. If the New York Post, the Washington Examiner, and everyone else wants you to think it was a COVID vaccine-related death, you ought to question why. Okay, sound a little heated, but this is why. This is why they're doing this. Because they don't want you to see the other news that is going on. They want you and me to be buzzing about this vaccine and how dangerous it is, and to have the buzz be about whether or not we can reopen schools, hospitals, normal gyms, restaurants, because we're all arguing about a vaccine. Now, this is the real news. This is, okay, no more vaccine talk. I just wanted to reiterate that it is a silly thing to get upset about. You can't just take the logical rule of dying with COVID and dying from COVID. Dying after vaccine, dying from vaccine. You guys can make that connection, right? Great. Now, before I tell you about these two stories, like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. If you don't like what I just said, that's okay. That's okay. Hopefully you can accept it and we can just move on. And if you really don't like it and now you hate me, man, I'd hate to see that subscribe button go unsubscribed, but I'd rather that than just someone who just hates the channel and watches for hate purposes and then downvotes for hate purposes. So anyways, this is the real news they're trying to cover with all of the negative vaccine stirring, all of the BS, all of the seeding in conservative media to make sure we're all just talking about the vaccine and the deaths of the vaccine. Here, this from ABC News, we're now considering using the NASA facilities along the border to house migrant children. There are 8,100 or more minors in the ORR facilities as of today. This says a NASA site in California is being considered as a potential location to house the growing number of migrants coming across the border. This is saying sources told ABC News that plans are still in flux, but the site, the Moffett Federal Airfield in Mountain View, is expected to house a number of unoccupied minors in Customs and Border Protection custody, which has risen to just about 3,500 in recent weeks, according to sources and the internal CBP documents reviewed by ABC News. That's 3,500 more kids in the last week coming across the border. 3,500. And now we're going to house them in cages. No, not cages, Biden says. It's a facility. They say, quote, "The Department of Health and Human Services has requested federal agencies to determine whether they have currently vacant properties that might be available and suitable for potential future use as the temporary influx of care facilities for unaccompanied migrant children." So that's just newspeak for, hey, we're looking at any federal facility that is big enough that we can start jamming full of illegal immigrants. So instead of using resources to stop people coming from across the border, we're going to use resources to make room for them coming across the border. And that's not enough. This says HHS and NASA's Ames Research Center are coordinating a site assessment for the Moffett Field in California for HHS personnel to determine whether certain facilities at the site may be suitable for temporarily provide shelter space in the future. This effort will have no impact on NASA's ability to conduct its primary missions. Really? Well, I have a hard time believing that housing thousands of migrant children on base isn't going to have any impact on NASA's ability to conduct its business. But that is Biden's America. Under this administration, NASA is going to be housing all of the illegal immigrants, and that's where our resources are going, to commandeering federal sites, not to stopping the people from coming across the border. That would be too easy and too simple and too legal. So instead, we get to watch Russia and China expand to moon bases. Yeah, they're working together to build a moon base. They have a lunar base in the plans. But for NASA, we're going to have our migrant children, our illegal immigrants, coming to stay with the folks working on our space program. So unless you're Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos doing one of your extra government rocketry projects, unless you're one of these free-spirited entrepreneurs who's playing in space on your own, the US is having no part in the space race, the exploration of how do we set up a lunar base? How do we set up a base on Mars? How do we make sure that in 1,000 years, humanity still exists? And hopefully with the United States flag on whatever ship we're flying in. And Biden says again, no, NASA's going to take its time to make sure that the Democrat plantation can grow another generation of young children who will become voters. Instead, China and Russia can own space. We're not interested in that. Now, I don't know if you even heard about the lunar base. A year ago, you would have heard all over the news that Russia and China are making a space base on the moon. But now, with Biden being president, you don't hear it at all. You don't even hear that our NASA is taking on migrant children instead of trying to get to Mars faster, or instead of trying to set up our own base on the moon. Maybe they'll just come out and tell us they already have one. But we're not going there right now. Instead, we're just going to house the children. So these are the two stories, right? China and Russia building a base on the moon. Meanwhile, our NASA housing migrant children who should never have crossed the border. And all of this is being distracted from by stories like this. Like someone who has a freak random death, the same way that you would say someone with bacterial meningitis or viral meningitis when they hit, oh man, I have a headache, my neck aches. They go lie down and then they don't wake up. And they would say, well, they had the vaccine last Monday. And then here's a headline. So again, be careful the news that you read and be more interested in the shit that makes a lot more sense, at least internationally, to pay attention to. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and help us keep America afloat.